It's a pleasure being here this evening. Thanks for inviting me, Subhash, and thanks for giving me an opportunity to share the story of how we began creating something that didn't exist 20 years ago when I was working. So I'll have to do that whole, this thing back in time and take you back to the early 90s when I passed out of college. Along with Rajesh, we were batchmates in college too. And we both got placed into Citibank. You might think that some of the things that I'm saying now is not very good for my family harmony, but I still will go ahead and say those things. So we started off our career together, and we had decided to get married, which is a good thing. We are still married. So we said we would go ahead and then get married, and then we got married soon after after I joined. We were working together, and then it was after I had a child that suddenly I felt as if I had become an island. And this whole thing of what we say about the girl child in India, we initially had this thing of there was this big drama about saving the girl child. There was a movement which said let's not kill the female fetuses and let's save the girl child and all that. That was successful. And then you had the next part, which was that let's educate the girl child. So, girls were educated, and, they got into the IITs and the IIMs, and they got into multiple different institutions and everything. And yes, they started doing very well. But after that, what? So after a girl, enters the workplace, after she gets married and after she becomes a mother, what happens to the dichotomy that starts existing then? What happens to the fact that the Indian workplace does not create sustainable careers for women, because most of the careers are benchmarked along the male Western model of working? What happens because in India we do not have sufficient child care systems in the form of daycare systems or creches? Take my own case. When I had my child and I was thinking of, after my maternity, thinking of going back and all that, and when I was discussing with my own mother, not my mother-in-law, my mother, note the point. Okay, so when I was talking to my mother about, wanting to get back, and I was saying that, probably maybe I should consider a daycare center or something. To my mother, what she heard was that I was leaving my child in an orphanage. That's what she felt it to be. She felt that, the fact that in good homes, mothers take care of their children at the cost of their career. Yes, maybe. So then what are we really creating? We are then looking at women abandoning their careers halfway at great loss, not just to themselves, to their families, and to the country. So this is the problem that I faced as a mother in the year mid-90s, in the year 1993-94. So I went on to then, went on this big utopian search for an organization that would offer flexibility or part-time working. And to my shock and horror, I didn't find any. So people would, I would make it in the interview, and when I would say that I have a baby and I need to look after and I want a part-time or a flexi-time job, that would be the deal breaker. So then I went on to teach. I started teaching at MOP Vaishnav College, and it was during this part that when I was actually observing the careers of women and how they began sabotaging it themselves much earlier in their own lives, that the concept of creating a service, looking at women and looking at second careers for women really came about. And it was actually Rajesh who pushed me into the whole thing of entrepreneurship, saying that, I think you have a good idea and you should just go behind it. But if you were to really look at the advent of the Indian woman professional in the Indian workplace, it's somewhat like this. Back in the early 90s, a lot of industries sort of came about which lent themselves to hiring more women. So you had what is called as the LPG happening: liberalization, privatization, globalization. So with the advent of this, you had many industries, knowledge economy industries, you had service industries, which all provided very good avenues for careers for women. So you had a large number of women actually joining the workplace. And this was the time when India saw the largest influx of women into the workplace, which was in the mid-90s. But very soon, and we don't have attrition numbers for those years, but we do have attrition numbers for now, because we began tracking it proactively, we know that 1 out of every 5 women quits due to a work-life imbalance reason. So what has typically happened? We have created a demand whereby more women can enter the workplace, but the workplace is not sustainable for them to continue their careers. So which is why the representation of women's workforce participation, if you were to put it pictorially or diagrammatically, it takes the shape of a pyramid. You have women entering at about 44%. I'm sure in all of your organizations, and I know for a fact that Cognizant too this is true, you have almost equal numbers of women and men joining at the entry level. And I know for a fact that some of your women entrants are really bright kids, very, very bright girls. So it's about roughly 44% if you take Indian representation. And then what happens? So they reach that middle level, and at that point of time it's roughly in the range of about 26 to 28%. And then it goes up, shrinks further. At the CXO level, it's down to about 8%. And then if you look at the boardrooms are really lonely places for women. Only 3 out of every 100 board members are women. So you have this whole shrinkage happening right through, where women constantly drop out of the workplace. The benefit of having more women in the workplace is not just about diversity. It's not just about the fact that diversity means better inculcation of ideas, better access to knowledge, better harvesting of thoughts and ideas. It's not just about that. It's the sheer money that is invested by each family in developing a woman in terms of getting her to study, or what happens when she reaches an age where she takes up a career. All of that then becomes completely meaningless because her career lacks sustainability. So this is why when in the year 2005 we created India's first network for women who seek work-life balance, and we figured that there was a fallacy in the word balance itself. We no longer call it work-life balance. We call it work-life integration. Because the minute you say balance, immediately the thought is that one should go up for the other to come down. And if you're looking at, two aspects, which is your home vis-a-vis your career, then it automatically means that your career has to be given up in order for your home to survive, or vice versa. So we call it work-life integration. So we started off as a very small community of about 200 women who were looking at work-life integrated careers. And the first thing that we did was we went to organizations and told them, hey, you know what, there is this set of women who have work experience, who've already been in the careers, and who have taken a break for all the right reasons. They have not quit because they wanted a better job, or they wanted more power, position, prestige, or pay. They quit doing the right thing. They quit because they needed to be there for their children and their families. And it's not always just only child care. It's also elder care in many reasons. So elder care is an equal, sort of a reason that many women have to quit their jobs. So when you look at this group is there, and organizations started evincing interest in engaging with these women, in looking at this as an alternate talent pool. And then slowly the momentum grew, and before we knew, we had touched 1,000 women, we had touched 1,000 members, and then it became 2,000 and 3,000, and today we are at 26,000 women who are spread across the country, as a community of women who are seeking work-life integrated careers. All of them are second career women. If you visit our website, which is www.avtariwin.com, you will find a lot of details about what we do and what typically happens. But there's an interesting point that I'd like to make, and I'd probably keep it short, conscious of time. The fact is, we were able to place several hundred women in second careers with different organizations, Cognizant including, in the years 2007-8. Then, when we actually went back to them, to ask how they were faring in their jobs after the break, we figured that a lot of them had quit again. And we asked them, why did you quit? So what was it this time? I mean, last time it was a work-life reason. What is it this time? And they then came back to us with a very interesting perspective, and they said that organizations do not have the mindset to accept the fact that women's careers are different from men's careers. So we figured that we were probably touching the tip of the iceberg in terms of reintegrating women into the workplace, especially looking at sustainable careers, not only for women who've taken a break, but for every woman who's out there in the workplace. For every woman who's working, is her career sustainable? And if she's going to take a break, is the organization or the workplace ready to take her back? So we started, embarking upon research studies, and from that year onwards, from the year 2008 onwards, we have been putting together one piece of primary research, and you will probably find it on the site as well, which is called a viewport. And this deals with one aspect of women's careers. There is a report on women and how men impact women's careers. There's one on what are the 10 top things that women seek in their careers. There's another report on what happens when women take a break and how do women view flexibility. So all of these are there. So we figured that the issue was not just about finding jobs for women. It was also about preparing the workplace to accept that women's careers are very different from men, that it could be a lateral career, it needn't be linear. It needn't be one after the other. It could very well be careers which are activity based or craft based. And here's where I think knowledge management really plays a role. Because a lot of women who have taken a break, they are repositories of knowledge. They are people who hold in them, what we actually call the craft of doing something. So what happens to these women when they are lost forever, when they don't get reintegrated into the workplace? That knowledge completely goes waste. So from that perspective, today what we've been doing is we've started approaching this issue with a multiple focus. So on one hand, we conduct research which provides information to the organization in terms of how do they engage with women, how do they sort of challenge this attrition. See, today women's workforce participation rate for India is 28%, which means out of every 100 employable women in this country, only 28 actually hold a career. So what happens to the remaining women? Why are they not interested? Why is corporate India actually not engaging with them? Why has corporate India not made it exciting for these women to come back or to even hold sustainable careers? So those are questions which we ask. They are tough questions. Companies are uncomfortable answering a lot of those questions, but we do anyway ask them, and we do get answers quite a few times. And the answers are like this. The fact is that managers need to be prepared to manage women differently. See, the woman in India is she's a recent entrant into the workplace. The Indian woman professional, as we call her, she is just about 50 years old in this country, about 55 years old in this country. That's how recently women have actually started entering the workplace and have started working professionally. So which means, the different modes of interacting with and engaging with women, they take on the shape of a Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So at the bottom, at the basic level, you have hygiene and security needs. So we ask these questions to companies. Does your company have an anti-sexual harassment policy? At the very basic level, do you provide security for the women who are there in your organization? The next level, do you have separate toilets for women? If you do, what is the per capita toilet numbers? Do you have enough toilets for the large numbers of women who are joining? At the next level, do you have a proper maternity leave? Do you have the best in class 6 months paid maternity leave? How much do you offer? Do you offer 3 months? And then do you offer, flexible on-ramping back? Do you help women with that? Do you help them stay in touch with their area of expertise while they are still on the break? Then do you offer flexibility to women, who have taken a break and who want to come back? Do you actually even tap into the pool of women who will only work flexibly, who do not want to work full-time or part-time? So do you do that? From that point onwards, do you offer training and skill building initiatives for women? Because women need to manage skills very differently from men. For instance, one of the biggest things that we get asked, and we run skill building initiatives for women. In fact, one of the most successful skill building initiatives that we've been running now for the past 3 editions is something called the Segway sessions. Now, the word Segway is an interesting word. It's a musical word. It comes from the opera. The Segway is nothing but transition. It's that linking music which connects 2 main parts in an opera. So we call this period of transition that a woman undergoes. It could be anything. It could be from being a mother from being a single woman to becoming a married woman, from being a married woman to being a mother, to become, to probably dropping off the career, to coming back again. So all these interludes are called segues. So we address women through this thing called the segue sessions. And in the segue session, it's usually a one-day skill building initiative. And one of the biggest issues that we face there, it's not about technology, it's not about technical expertise, it's not about the hard things. It's about softer aspects that a woman goes through, things like guilt, for instance. I think, guilt is an ailment that women suffer from maximum. And more than anything else, I think Indian women suffer from it to the largest extent. So you have many careers which have become, victims of this guilt phenomenon. So we actually address it. We ask them, why do you feel guilty? What is the origin of that? So these kind of skill building initiatives are very critical for women, in any organization. So from that perspective to actually having a mentor. And today we have moved away from the whole perspective of talking about a mentor to talking about a sponsor. So in what way is a sponsor for a woman professional different from a mentor? A mentor is someone who guides you and who tells you this is what you need to do and this is how you should navigate the organization. But a sponsor is invested in you. A sponsor looks at your success as his or her success. So that is why we now are encouraging the whole concept of sponsoring vis-a-vis mentoring. So these kinds of things. So we started asking organizations about what they would do to increase the number of women who were retained in their own companies. So it's not just about, finding channels or finding ways to get women back into the workplace. It's also about how you are able to retain the women professionals in your own organization. So the many challenges that we have faced in this whole journey, that of creating flexible careers, that of creating an awareness in the minds of the organization that, they need to look at women differently and they need to start viewing the careers of women differently, have been multifold. I mean, we've had, interesting experiences where the boss of a person, CXO of a company, which, is an old age economy industry, and we went and spoke to him about the benefits of flexible working. And he said, are you actually saying that I will stay in the office throughout the day and my subordinate will go home half a day? Then he said, no, you also have the choice to go home half a day if you want. But yes, the whole point of flexible working is that, she chooses the time and space when she works. And this has now become gender agnostic. So the whole point of flexibility, and we created a product for it, which we call Flexicurity, which combines performance security for the organization and career security for the individual. So we call it Flexicurity. And this suite of processes and systems which we offer organization, surprisingly it turned out that there are an equal number of men who are looking at flexibility as a way of working. And you were just mentioning about it when you said that many people are working from home today, your colleagues. And it's very easily implementable in the knowledge economy space. It's very easily implementable in knowledge industries because A, you are already sort of prepared for it by having the equipment and everything. And B, the kind of work that you do is quite, lends itself very well to being performed flexibly. So this whole concept of a mindset of presenteeism, as we call it, fact that there has to be a warm body at a desk and that equals working. So that sort of a thing needed to be, broken. That whole perspective of saying that you don't need to be physically present in order to deliver work had to be broken. It might be, gender agnostic. It might be that men also seek it. But believe me, for a woman, flexible working is the oxygen of her career. For every woman, if she is provided with that flexibility, you can salvage anywhere, and I'm quoting numbers, I'm quoting data of a research, you can salvage up to 30% of the careers that are lost today simply by providing flexibility in your workplace. And this flexibility is again, it's not dependent on industry. You can look at old age economy industries which are doing it. You can look at, modern organizations which are doing it. It's prevalent everywhere. So that is where we are right now. We have set ourselves up a big vision of reaching out to the 1.5 million second career women in this country. That's the number of women who have dropped off the workplace since the mid-90s till about now. And that's the number of women that we hope to touch, we hope to impact. And if we would consider ourselves, very, very successful if we are able to resurrect a part of those careers, because these are all interrupted careers, and these are all interrupted careers for the right reasons. And we just did a quick math, just back of the envelope kind of math. If every one of these women, these 1.5 million women in the Indian economy were to earn nothing more than just 1 lakh rupees per annum, 1 lakh rupees per annum, if they were to earn, we are talking about a staggering 150 billion increase in India's GDP. So this is the power of the numbers that we are talking. This is the kind of, numbers that we are talking. And, what we are doing is we are probably, a lot of people tell me, you don't have any competitors, you're alone. And I miss that. I miss the fact that we don't have competitors. We want competitors. We want more people coming and saying the same thing. We want more people talking about the fact that women need to have sustainable careers. We don't want to be that, lone voice which keeps talking about it at every opportunity. But then I welcome opportunities like this, where I'm able to share a few thoughts about what really, is happening. And this is something very relevant, because it also means that it's not just about your wife or your girlfriend that we are talking. We're also talking about your daughters. We are talking about the kind of future that we are creating in this country. We are talking about the fact that tomorrow the needs of women are going to be even more complex and even more different than what it is today. So from that perspective, I hope it's been a bit of food for thought for all of you. And for more details, you can always visit our website, like I said, www.avtarivan.com. Please also connect with us on Facebook. We have 2 pages. We have one on Avtar Ivan itself, which speaks about what's happening in that space, and another interesting one on Flexi Careers India, which speaks about what is happening with regard to new ways of working. So how do you work differently? How do you work smart? And that is not something that's only restricted to women. Men can work smartly too. So thank you very much. Pleasure being here with you.
Companies like TCS or Infosys, Cognizant, have we tried, talking to them, saying that we can, like a contractor maybe, since you also do resourcing, have we tried something like that for women in specific?
That's all we do.
Huh?
That's all we do.
So
we constantly go to organizations like you. We constantly go to IT companies and we suggest to them that here is a large group of women who you can, look at as
true.
either a...
So how open have they been? Or how much, or who are your top client in this whole perspective?
Okay. I promised my team back at office that I will not say anything controversial today. Especially having been invited.
No, I think you should say what the truth is.
Yeah, I will. Let me put it this way. Among the organizations that we work for, IT companies are the least. While they are the best poised to actually engage with this group, the fact is that, I think the reason is, and we are quite cognizant of it. No puns intended here. Yeah. So we are quite aware of the fact that most IT organizations in India are client facing. Very few product companies which, have the eligibility or the wherewithal to be able to do as they wish. But any organization that's client facing, whether it's an IT or an ITES or BPO, whatever it is. So they then get into that whole stigma of, will my client be okay to this? How will I be able to, assure them of the same kind of quality? How will I be able to assure them of the fact that, I'm not working from home, I'm working from office? Those issues. Our biggest clients have been in the fields of banking, financial services, retail, interestingly. We have had some very good clients in the area of telecom. We have also done a lot of work with IT companies, but not to the extent that is possible. The appetite of IT organizations, and I was recently at a conference and I was addressing the audience, and there is this big talk about how India is facing this huge talent skill shortage, and how by 2020 India is never going to be able to face up to the kind of numbers that they're looking. And here is a pool. Here is this group that has the kind of knowledge that you want, what are you going to do to leverage it? So it's a thought that, you know, it means that you have to really lay those pipelines to that talent. And you have to do what the talent asks you. If they say we will only work flexibly, you have to allow that. Or if they say that, you know, we will only work during these periods. For instance, there are over 9 flavors of flexible working that are available. When we work with organizations and we help them flexidize and unbundle the jobs, we offer them a bouquet of about 9 to 10 flavors of flexible working. There is something very interesting called term time working, which many women prefer. What it means is you work sort of alongside the timings of your child. So you go to work when your child goes to school, you take off on weekends, you take off the summer months. So you are practically doing everything that you want to do for your child while still working. This is very popular in the UK. So this is again a flavor of working that, you know, companies can explore, and it's going to be, see, the future of work is completely different from what we see it. You know, they imagine, when people are talking about the way work is going to take shape, the future of work is imagined as a big hive where people come and access to a place to work only when there is a need. And the whole thing of work being a place vis-a-vis work being something you do is the dichotomy that's going to happen in the future of work. So, yeah, so this is the way it is. We are hoping, we've had a discussion with a very large company very recently. We are also giving them the benefit of doubt that maybe the market is such that they don't want to experiment at this point of time. But we've been giving them many, many benefits of doubts like that for a long, long time. So we are hoping that they wake up to the reality and begin seeing what's happening. And the best joke is this. Whenever I go and meet a big, CXO of an organization and we pitch and we say, this is what it is and why don't you look at it? The first thing I hear from them is, you know what, my wife is also like that. Would you be able to give her a job? So you know the truth, it's staring you right in the face. Your wife is that. And it's like what David Ogilvy says, the customer is not a fool, she's your wife. Same way, the eye winner is not a stranger, she's your wife. It's your wife we are talking about. So, and everybody, they immediately say, I can totally identify with it. Because my wife took a break, when my children were born, and, she's brilliant at law, and she's now trying to come back, we don't know what to do. So what are organizations like yours doing then? Shouldn't there be a way in which this whole, this talent pool is actually brought in back? And it could mean all the difference between success and failure or success and mediocrity. Isn't it? So, long answer to your short question. Yeah. Yes?
I don't know if this is the space I should enter, but still, I'd like to offer my 2 cents. I fully empathize with this context. I've heard so many different stories and concerns and issues coming out of this, so I fully understand what you have said. For instance, recently I heard from a friend in a neighboring switch company on OMR, a lady had asked, she was pregnant. Because of the Indian context, she really didn't want to explain the details to her lead, her manager, and say that this is the reason why she's asking for a cab drop. But it was 5 o'clock and she urgently needed to rush to the hospital for an urgent treatment. And she was asking for a cab drop. Said, it's 5 o'clock now, the company cabs are available, the buses are available, you take that. But that completely defeated the purpose. She took a bus and then she took another bus and reached the hospital and barely managing to sustain and stand on two legs and reach home safe. It was a very precarious situation with more finer details. So I'm really kind of I was really incensed when I heard this and said that, and next day the manager was reminded that cab drop facility should have been approved at an instance, and it was seen as what you would call gender agnostic and gender unfriendly. So I fully understand there are so many tiny situations like this. But I think the critical line, the critical expression you used is mindset of organizations. And here, I just wonder if you have given it a thought. It is not men in organizations, men versus organizations. It is not women versus organizations. Both men and women are agents of organizations. There are a lot of leads, and like they say in the dowry context, women as well, who are the physical embodiments of the organization. So they are both agents of the organization. So we're talking about the mindset of the organization. And in that context, I wonder if you've given it a thought that the larger devil is out there and you're up against a bigger problem, what you mentioned, the tip of the iceberg, and that's patriarchy. And patriarchy has a mindset. So in this context, my thinking is, so if you're going to combat patriarchy at all levels, have you ever considered why part of this problem remains unresolved. And for example, we're not so far away from progressive thoughts on gender. It's about 100 years or 110 years since Britain got enfranchisement of women to be able to the right to vote, the right to citizenship and right to property. So this is pretty recent, 110 years old. So we are pretty backward as a globe in women's rights. The thought that I would like to do is, if we have conceded that patriarchy is a problem and that it's not just about gender alone, it's about what do these women do to or organizations like yours to create an alliance of other women's groups who struggle similarly in so many different contexts of life, work, law, society, dowry, so many other places where patriarchy as a framework is similarly very, very oppressive. Do you ever think of making an alliance, or is this by any chance also a class statement that these women also remain isolated as a matter of preference and do not want to reach out to other women in the same society?
I'll answer this question in two parts. The first part is with regard to, even accepting the fact that second careers for women or a career for women is an important deal. So, from that perspective, let me, share with you what happened when we were, actually attempting to access some funding for our own organization. And we approached this very, very large, world famous, funding institution, which actually funds social enterprises like ours. We are a social enterprise. We are a clearly categorized social enterprise. And so the thing they asked us, does your program provide livelihood? We said yes. Does it create jobs? We said yes. Then they said, but these are only the second earners of the family, right? They are not the primary earners. So what do you have to say for that? The fact is that the focus is there are far more pressing issues than trying to create a second career for a woman in this country. I fully agree. I think in one of my columns in the Economic Times, I even wrote that the Prime Minister, while he was addressing people on the Republic Day, he actually spoke about flexible working. And he spoke about the fact that Indian women need that much more than their Western counterparts. So for having flexible working even figure in the Prime Minister's speech is a big victory for us. So from that perspective, I think what you're mentioning about whether, would we be able to link up with other groups which are facing the similar issue of patriarchy, I would not entirely agree if that would be of use to us, because these are very different issues. See, and let me also say that our target today, especially today, is the Tier 1, Tier 2 urban woman professional. We have not yet reached the hinterlands of India. We have not yet reached rural India, where, how do you handle patriarchy, or how you actually manage to really work against a very stiff, sort of masculine dominated system is very prevalent. That's not the issues our women face. In fact, let me even share with you that, as Sheryl Sandberg says, and in fact today I've posted on Facebook about that the best career decision a woman can make is her choice of spouse. That is what Sheryl Sandberg says. Sheryl Sandberg is the CEO of Facebook. She says that the best career decision a woman can make is her choice of a spouse. So from that perspective, a lot of the women who come back for second careers, they have to first of all tackle this whole thing of gaining acceptance in the home front for them to be able to come back. That's the first issue that so we conduct programs, we conduct sessions where we address the husbands of women. And we ask them, what is it that you're really, looking for? What are your objections to this? How do you actually work together with women? So from that perspective, we don't look at men as, we don't take an adversarial position at all. We believe that, women are early entrants, recent entrants. So there's a long way to progress. And we need the support of every man that we can find. So from that point of view, we have not thought of this alignment. The second way I would like to answer your question is, a lot of women today are themselves in a quandary when it comes to, coming back into a career after childbirth. Now the issue or the reason for that is, India is the country, and there is statistics to prove this, where children remain children for the longest period of time. In other countries around the world, you have children who are treated as adults or given the adult status when they are 16 and a half. or 17. Here it is 18 and a half. Now, I will not say whether that's good or bad. I think it's pretty good. I mean, my son is 20 and I still completely mollycoddle him even today. And I think it's a question of your, the way you focus on it. But the hidden message there is the fact that society expects women to complete their mothering and that whole process of mothering for a very long time. So things are changing. Today, in fact, you would remember, the TEDx Chennai talk where I had spoken about the different generations. The last or the youngest generation in the workplace today, which is the Gen Y, it's a universal generation. It's not unique only to India. Whereas the other three generations in the Indian workplace, they are unique to India. The Gen X in India is a different Gen X from the rest of the Gen X's in the world. In India, we don't have baby boomers. We call them free gens. And they are a totally different generation when it comes to, the rest of the world vis-a-vis India. Similarly, we have a intermediary generation, a sandwich generation called E-gens, who are again unique to this country. You don't find that generational cohort anywhere in the world. But Gen Ys, they are the same everywhere. The same kind of, that ease with which they spend, that absolute lack of guilt when it comes to, being an aggressive consumer. That whole thing of, me first and wanting, everything and the quick instant gratification which they require, whether it's a job or something, anything that you want, that is, very prevalent for Gen Ys. Today, the women that we address ourselves to are predominantly mothers of the generation that precedes Gen Y. That follows Gen Y. So they are, undergoing some very unique challenges when it comes to mothering. And many of them are themselves the children of full-time homemaker mothers. So they have never experienced what it is, to be a mother who works and who also provides mothering. Because their mothers have all been full-time homemakers. They have not been career women. So that is the quandary that, India is typically facing now. So it's a learning process. It's not going to be something that, is going to change overnight. It's going to require many, many such discussions. It's going to require a lot of awareness that, is there in people's minds with regard to women's careers, and that's how it's going to progress. Yeah.
Sorry if some of what I say hurts you, but the intention is not that. Go back, 50, 60 years ago.
Yeah.
I come from a village, I've seen that even today it's happening. So the era of agriculture,
yes.
The entire family used to work.
Yes.
The husband, wife, mother, grandpa,
Absolutely.
Everybody who can work, they used to work.
Yes.
And they work from home.
True.
Right?
True.
And the whole thing, and I know today there are a lot of people who migrated from a western side of Tamil Nadu to our place. They made today they are crorepathi's. I mean, really started with nothing. Today they have 80 acres and 100 acres. I can name not just one person, many people. But
Sure.
all the family thing, work from home. Then the hard way actually, equally, I mean, I've seen the woman working on the field, it's equally tough compared to the, the husbands and so on. They created the world, they're happy. And today they send the sons to different colleges. That's a different story. I mean, let's not talk about that. So that's an agriculture era. So when you move from agriculture era to industry era, where there are few jobs where you can wear pants and go, and then maybe they had a choice because it's an industry era. It requires a masculine power. So they send their male child to mechanical engineering or some other engineering, electrical engineering. They push them into a factories and started working, started earning. So that created a kind of a divisions, right? So that's coming to the industry era. We created a separations. I think only then I think the woman, I think all the people used to sit at home and become a homemakers. So now when you're talking about a knowledge area, I want to divide that knowledge industry into two categories and go back and asking rather than blindly taking certain decisions say they are wrong. But sometimes you go and find from Cognizant why, what is the specific things? Is it because of security? For example, let's take a BPO environment. The BPO environment, the client demands that all of you should come inside the floor, not even other employees from different BPO office, not allowed. So it's not like every employees of Emphasis or Cognizant can enter every floor. They divide that, put a securities, and then you have to go inside and then start working. But ideally, there's no security issues. Believe me, all this non-voice and voice process with all the computers, it can create a true virtual, workplace, including the home. As plugging in from home, you can all the things. Maybe it's the security issues. So now, instead of blindly looking at companies, large companies, there are two things. Maybe they have enough number of people coming into the office working, meeting the highest demands of the customers. Did you go down one level to go into the middle companies or startup companies, right? Compromise on certain salaries, that's one part, number one. And two, in this case, I think women, we learned and we have seen that in scenario, they have the better right brain than the male, right? So in a country like India, I think, do we need to focus on innovation more and creativity more so that the women's right brains, no matter where they are, can be utilized to move up the value chain? So are we targeting the wrong doors? Are you knocking the wrong doors? Should we come down to start, targeting the startup companies, or start targeting a creative work, like creating a website designs or blogging, writing, authoring, and so kinds of things? And then the final question that I'll start with that is that, are you understood in your mind, there is a woman going inside the office, working 20 hours a day, moving up the ladder to vice president, senior vice presidents like Mr. Nui or whatever it is. There's one category of women. I don't want to go into the other side of their personal things. So people working from flexi, part-time, working from home, are you able to compromise on your career path and aspirations?
Yeah. Are we done? Yeah. First of all, nothing you said hurt me, so it's okay. Yeah, there's nothing that was, even the slightest bit provocative about what you said. These are issues which we battle every day, and we keep asking ourselves these same questions. Interesting analogy with agriculture. We constantly look at it. Men shared equal amount of work at home in an agri environment. It was not just the woman. So there was equal partnership. In fact, if there is such a kind of a model which we can bring to our communities, in the urban scenario, that will be utopia. That will be awesome. So we don't have that. We find it even though we talk about the metrosexual man and this and that and all of that stuff, I don't think, that has really happened. Point number one. Point number two, with regard to the point that you raised, very interesting point, that's exactly what we do. We do not look at the big companies as our targets at all. The company which has hired the largest number of chartered accountants from us over a 3-year period is a company whose name you will not know. They are a small outlet, chartered accounting company, which have been hiring repeatedly second career women for their projects. And the best part that they have is they have a cost arbitrage over talent. So here are they getting access to a lady who's got 12 years work experience. She's a chartered accountancy gold medalist, and the office is 1 kilometer from her house. She agrees to work for them at half pay. She's not bothered. She says, you know what, I can go to office and come back in time to feed my child. I don't care about what that company's name is. Get me a job, I'm fine with it. So today what we are also telling women is, don't bother about the big brands. Don't bother about the fact that you need to only go and work in the big 6 or the big 7 or big 20 or whatever it is that you call it. Go for the small organizations. Go to the small organizations, because not only will you be actually valued, because imagine getting a CFO at 1/3 the cost that you would pay a CFO. And I'm not even talking about the mom and pop type of organizations. I'm talking about small scale, medium scale organizations. And we are in talks with a number of them. In fact, a lot of the women that we, sort of train or, help them with their skill building, they create careers for themselves. We don't even need to be there to find placements for them. Last, we had a Segway session happening at Bangalore. And after the Segway sessions, we had many companies. We had Genpact participating in it. We had Mphasis. We had IBM. We had Accenture. We had PepsiCo. We had Unilever. All of them are very heavily invested in the concept of second careers for women. But the mail that really touched my heart was from this lady called Zita Maria. And she wrote to me, she said, I attended Segway sessions. I didn't get shortlisted by any of these organizations because I come from a hospitality background and my experience was not relevant to anybody. But I went through the 3 programs, and what it gave me was the confidence that there are many other women like me who go through the same thing as me, and there is comfort in numbers, especially in misery. Yeah? And if I am to go and actually do it something, I'm going to do it on my own. And she went and approached a chain of restaurants, which was probably about 2 kilometers from her house, And today she is their banquet manager, and she has offered to give me discounts on every, meal that I have at Bangalore. So she says, you please come, this is what I've done. We never found her a job, but we created enough confidence in her mind for her to say that this is not the end of life for me. That yes, I do have my homemaking, responsibilities, and we urge all our I-winners, we urge all of the women in our network that they must focus on that. I mean, ultimately being the procreator of the world is a prerogative that women have, right? So we enjoy being mothers, we enjoy, raising children, we enjoy the fact that we are the ones who, children run to. We are the primary caregivers, we like that. But that doesn't mean that we should like it to the exclusion of everything else. We want a career too. So from that perspective, when she said, this is what I have done, we felt elated, we felt, very, very happy. But besides that, all these companies also hired women out of the Segway sessions. Although it's not a job creation event, it's not a hiring event, fact is that there is a hidden agenda there. We are showcasing these women. We are telling organizations, hey, look at these bright bunch of women out here. They will ask you tough questions. Are you ready to answer those questions? Are you ready to hire them? If so, great. It's a win-win for both of you. So I think it's a, to just elaborate a little bit more, I think it's a change that is needed, not just in society, but in the woman herself. Believing that she can do it, and she can really do it. So thanks. Any more questions? Really.
More to please give the mementos. Yeah, I think this also is buy one get one free, and the title is actually similar to what Rajesh has already written. Rajesh, please. No, it's out of the box.